Hi everyone. Today let's talk about the dovish Fed Powell. Then we'll get into all the normal data and charts. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. So Fed Powell was pretty much as dovish as we could have expected. He said a September rate cut was on the table. They had discussions. He even mentioned at one point that they had a discussion on whether it was reasonable to cut on this meeting, but that it was quickly voted down, but it was still a discussion point, which is interesting. They mentioned that inflation continues to trend back towards that 2% goal. They are considering that the labor market has softened significantly and that they are considering their dual mandate. They do need to focus on the jobs market as well. And then he said a lot of the same things that he's been saying: data dependent. No one data point determines Fed direction, but it's the accumulation of data, and they will continue to look at the data as it comes in. He did mention that the labor market is not currently creating inflationary pressures, and he also said 50 basis points is not something they're talking about. That should have been expected. Really, we've been looking at 25 basis points for this entire time, and that has not changed. And they also mention here Fed Powell is going to talk at Jackson Hole on the 17th and 18th, and we would expect to hear some more commentary from him then. But overall, dovish Fed Powell, and markets liked it for the most part. Moving over to fear and greed, we got a massive jump higher up to a 52 from a 42. Markets went bananas overnight and they continued into the session. You can see that rally up here. And then looking at greed, we've now bottomed and rallying. We talked about that being a potential, but I thought we'd get a little bit more of a dip. Strength into extreme greed here, breadth in greed. So market indicators all in the greed side. Whereas put call ratio really hasn't rallied with it. Interesting. Volatility dipping down here on the rally today. Safe haven demand still concern there. People are still buying bonds, trying to lock in those yields, especially with the likelihood of a September cut. And then junk bonds really not moving, just grinding slightly higher and sitting in regular greed. Moving over to seasonality, you can see we are in this grinding time period. Today was actually supposed to be a little bit bullish. I didn't really expect it to follow through on that, but it did, and we did get a really strong push, much stronger than you would expect seasonally. And then looking at that August seasonality, during election years, August is a pretty bullish period. During your regular years, it is usually bearish to flat. So we'll see which one of those we're going to get. Right now, it does seem like we should have a little bit more upside, at least for the first week and a half. Moving over to earnings, Meta blowing it out here on the bottom line, beating pretty well on the top line as well. MasterCard beating on both. They did report pre-market. T-Mobile beating, Qualcomm beating, everything looking quite good. Boeing did miss pretty substantially on earnings. Revenue also missing a little bit, but they did announce a new CEO and markets liked that. Garmin beat on both the top and bottom lines. MGM, interesting to see them doing quite well, beating on both pretty substantially there on the bottom line as well. And then Etsy missing on the bottom line, beating on the top. So consumers still doing well out there. And then for tomorrow, you still have Amazon, Apple, Intel, ConocoPhillips, Booking, again, consumer, travel, interesting to watch. Dominion Energy for those oil and gas stocks. Hershey's, just fun to watch. Clorox, consumer staple, pretty expensive one. Also want to see how they're doing. And then Federal Realty, that is a REIT that I do own in one of my accounts. So I'll look at them this quarter as well. Moving over to the economic calendar, you can see CPI for the Eurozone coming in a little higher than expectations. That is not super common for them. And then looking at Chicago PMI, a little better than expected there. Pending home sales jumping way better than expected, 4.8%. Pretty substantial jump there. FOMC already touched on it, but they held rates flat. And then looking at Thursday, initial jobless claims, definitely going to be interesting. And then a little bit more economic data here with manufacturing PMI, manufacturing employment, and then regular manufacturing PMI and prices. Those are coming out at 10 o'clock. So between 9:45 and 10 o'clock, some economic data. And then if you hold anything into the close tomorrow, it's going to be affected by that unemployment data coming out on Friday. If this continues to tick up here, I think that's going to be interesting. Should lock in that Fed rate cut for September. But if this continues to rise, that is definitely recessionary. And then we could be in for a harder landing. Moving over to Max Pain here, you can see it's still around that 545 area, stock price 551, so we got a massive step higher there today. You can also see a bunch of options coming out of the market. Puts now at 540, calls at 552, so not a ton of upside. Top of the puts is 558, that would be about 1.5% higher from current price. We were way at the bottom of the calls, made sense why we got a little bit of a jump, even still more aggressive than I would have guessed. Total options, 877, put call ratio 237, nothing crazy on there. And we are back into the middle of the range, maybe a little bit to the upside of that middle. Moving over to the charts here, you can see we got a massive rally, most of that coming after hours and into the pre-market this morning. And then you can see during the session, it actually was only up just a little bit here, about 0.5%. The overall jump for the day was 1.63%. And we talked about this 55 EMA being a zone of support. We had the level there, 540. Thought we would get a wick down to that trend, tap that just for a moment and then get a swing. But we got some Microsoft earnings. Those were pretty terrible, but they said they were going to do a bunch of CapEx spend, and that pushed semiconductors up. AMD crushed it, and that drove NVIDIA as well as Qualcomm, which eventually started pushing up markets here today. And overall, we got a big jump into that 21 EMA and VWAP. This was the zone that I was looking for on this previous push before we got the down move on Tuesday. Thought we might wick this level before seeing that bigger dip, and now we're going to see what happens. So we got the big dip, we got the rally. Is this the lower high, or is this the double top? Or will we see this actually break to new highs and then push into that 560, 570 zone? I don't really think that's going to happen. I think this is probably going to be a double top at best, but at least in the short term, it is rallying. Moving over to the Tasty charts, you can see that push up here, held that 55, gapped and rallied. Big volume, momentum didn't swing with it, but we did get the volume to support it. Upper ATR trailing stop is sitting at 563.92. which is right at this previous high, and I do think that's where we're going to top out. Again, that's best case scenario for me. Could absolutely turn a little bit earlier, maybe around the 560 area. We'll see how it plays, but right now, definitely short-term bullish. And then looking at that 4-hour chart, upper ATR band is the price target right now on the 4-hour, which is 555.64. So that gives you about another $3 higher from current price. We'll hit that zone, then we'll see what happens. Did get back into bullish conditions on the 4-hour chart, so looking to continue to play that here over the next day or two. Moving over to the NASDAQ, very similar thesis here. You can see big move down, kind of a double bottom, you could argue. The second low was a little bit deeper, down to that 450, 440 level. And then the rally after hours, rally pre-market. And then again, on the day, not that big of a push, about 1% during the day out of the 3% total. We gapped all the way from 457 all the way up to 467.87. So about a $10 move overnight. Momentum swinging to bullish. RSI, it's right at the SMA. So looking to see what happens there. Maybe one more downturn potentially. But at this point, you have a bottom. You have something to work off of. And I would expect that to be met with buyers, even if we did get some slight pullbacks. And then once we get into this zone here, maybe fill some of these gaps back from Tuesday the 23rd to the 24th. And then we have a gap back here from the 16th to the 17th as well. So maybe fill some of these gaps, get up to that 21 EMA, up around 482 or so. Moving over to the Tasty charts here, you can see we hit that lowest ATR band yesterday. Thought we would continue to grind that level at least a little bit. Bought some shares here, continued to rally. ATR resistance is all the way up at 490. Maybe we see a little bit more rally. So that would be your short-term price target up into the 490s, which again is about $20 higher from here, pretty substantial. Momentum swinging to bullish, volume coming in there a little bit. And then moving over to the 4-hour chart, you can see we're back into bullish conditions, so that's good. Looking to trade to the bull side now. Upper ATR band is 477.81 right here, so should give you at least another 1% or so, just short of 1% into that zone. Could see slight pullbacks, would expect buyers to come in around 466. Hold that higher low, and then we can start to see this kind of change in trend. You can see momentum here on the ATR bands starting to swing back to the bull side, so looking for a little bit of a bull swing. And like I said, bullish conditions on the ATR stop. So short-term price target, not too much higher from here, but I would expect at least a little bit of a pullback, higher low setup, and then a push. Again, looking for that 490 area that we saw on the daily chart. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow, both of these were very positive. Threw some huge wicks and then pulled back a little bit, up a little after hours. Russell hitting the price target, so we touched that trend. That was at 228. That was the zone we've been watching. Touched that level, pulled back. Huge volume. I still expect continuation here. That was the first test. You could still see a second push here. And with that volume that we saw, I would expect it, especially with what we got out of the Fed today. And then the Dow coming up just short of that trend line. Trend sitting at 412.40. High of day was 412.01. So did hit 412, but did come up a little bit short of the trend. Again, momentum bullish, volume bullish. RSI still below the SMA, but I would expect at least one more push, and I think that's part of why we're seeing some after-hours price action to the upside. Moving over to Broadcom and ASML, stocks that moved here today. Broadcom up almost 12%, massive move for them. They were down a lot yesterday, touched the level 143.80 over through this trend here, which has marked multiple bottoms. You can see those here, and then we got a big gap and rally through the level right to the 21 EMA after hours. And if this continues to push, you would expect to move up into the 172 area. And then looking at ASML, similar move, very powerful. Big move down, hit the 200, up 8.89% on the day, gapped higher and rallied, up more after hours, momentum swinging to bullish, RSI breaking above the SMA. You would expect at least a test of the 21 sitting at 982. So it's another $80 higher from here. We're almost 10% higher on this stock. So huge moves, or about 4% higher on this stock. So huge moves on the semiconductors. And will these rallies continue at least for one more day? I think they will. Moving over to the Mag 7, this has been holding higher lows, momentum swinging into bullish, RSI looking to see if we can break that SMA here. Same setup as we've been seeing. Looking for a push up to that 21 EMA. Let's go ahead and extend out that trend line, marking this top here. That trend sitting just above resistance at 226. After hours, we're already there on the Meta earnings. You can see that here on the hourly chart. Big push after hours, touching that level above the 200 SMA. So hourly chart back into bullish conditions. And then above that, 21 is sitting at 271.06. Moving over to Apple and Microsoft. Apple gapping up and rallying like everything else, 1.5% up, momentum swinging to bullish. 21 EMA sitting there at 224.97. So about 1% higher at least. And then Microsoft continuing to fall here, gap down, not as bad as I would have thought. And then you can see the wick on the day was all the way down to 412.21, touched the level there, 413.36. We'll see what happens. Structurally, this is still broken in my opinion. I think this will continue to move lower. Big volume on the day, but from top to bottom, it's pretty substantial move, about 12%. Can it touch that 200 sitting at 402.99? I would guess that it probably could. Moving over to Tesla and NVIDIA. Tesla up 4.24, still hovering at that level on a closing basis. Did rally through it just a little bit after hours, momentum swinging to bullish. And then looking at NVIDIA, huge gap and rally, 12.81% along with the rest of the semiconductors. They were pretty oversold in the short term. You can see 7% down on Tuesday before we got that gap here today. 21 EMA sitting there at 121.80. I would guess that's probably where we're going to go. And you can see after hours, we're kind of already there. I'm sure Meta is saying something about CapEx spend, so pushing this back up into the zone here. Next level, 125.17. Moving over to Meta and Amazon, you can see Meta earnings absolutely destroying expectations and good guidance, up 7.5% or so after hours. Not enough to blow out these previous highs, but definitely enough to recoup some of these losses. It had fallen from around 540 down to around 440 or so, bottomed out around 440.92. So big move, looking to push to that 520 level. Got some trend resistance up around 532. You would expect some continuation on this strong of an earnings. And then Amazon swinging to bullish, momentum slowly getting there, RSI breaking higher. They have earnings coming up and they are gapping already overnight, so we'll see how it plays. But you would expect at least a relative push here. Let's go ahead and extend that out. Trend resistance in the 21 sitting right around that 190, 191 area. Moving over to staples and discretionaries. Staples cannot get out of this consolidation range, down just barely 0.18. Still holding the level, wicked almost to that level and then rejected, still trading in that same range. Momentum fading a little bit. And then looking at discretionaries, obviously went higher with everything. 1.15, gap through the level, looking to get to that 189.38 level. Hit the 21s up a little bit after hours. Overall still bullish, looking for a break here if you can get that. Maybe we see a retest of 193. Moving over to utilities and oil and gas. These did exactly what we thought. Utilities breaking the level right to these previous highs. Got up to 73 or so, pulled back slightly. Still like this here, momentum and RSI bullish. 74 is the next level. And then oil and gas also doing well, up 0.82. Hit the trend line here, pulled back slightly. It's above the level. Would expect this to continue to hold higher lows and push. Moving over to oil and gold, both of these got huge pushes here today. Oil was up 4.26%, and then we gapped and we are rallying momentum bullish. This is probably headed to the trend line up around $82. Looks very strong off of today's push, something to look for in tomorrow's session. And then looking at gold here, huge push there as well, 1.81%. Lower interest rates means more bullish environment for gold, and sure enough, we saw that gap and rally, push through the level, probably headed at least to that 229.60 area and probably higher. Definitely a higher low setup, so you're looking for a high and then a higher high somewhere in that 235 area in my opinion. Moving over to breadth, you can see breadth holding here, continues to sit at this level, can't quite get above it. Did wick it, momentum swinging to bullish, so a little bit more bullish conditions there. Maybe we get back to 86.50. 50-day doing what you would expect. We were holding the level, consolidation, got the push, wicked these previous highs here. Now we'll see what happens. Is that a topping pattern, or is this signaling a push back up to that 83 area? Haven't been there since all the way back here at the end of March, and right now both of these still look at least a little bit bullish. Moving over to the dollar, as you would expect, dovish Fed means bearish dollar, and that is what we got. 0.42, gap through the level and sold, momentum swinging to bearish, RSI bearish, probably headed back to 103.6. Makes sense why markets were so bullish, but even with this kind of a move, it was more bullish in equities than I would have expected. Moving over to bonds here, you can see both of these absolutely cratering. 2-year hitting that 4.25, 10-year pushing almost down to that 4 level, 4.03. 397 is the next level for me. Got the trend sitting there as well, basically at the 4 level, and honestly both of these fell at basically the same rate, so bearish on yields, and it'll be interesting to see if we find any support in these critical zones. Moving over to bonds, as you would expect, bonds went much higher. J&K finally getting that breakout, momentum back to bullish, RSI back to bullish, clear close above the level, 96.50 is the next one. Bonds going higher, TLT up about 1%, even more after hours, momentum bullish, volume bullish, RSI bullish, it's above the level. Next level 96.50, we are already just above this previous high here after hours, and that gives you about another $1.50 of upside. Seems like bonds are on a run. I've been saying to accumulate these for a while, and it seems like that first cut is imminent, which should give bonds a substantial base. Moving over to volatility here, move index falling a little bit, VIX also falling a little bit. This could still hold a higher low, but it looks a lot more bearish now. Momentum stepping down, RSI breaking down. Probably going to push down to that 14.7 area, then we'll see what happens from there. Will we hold a higher low and then push to that ultimate price around 22.50? That would simulate that lower high setup or double top on markets and then that bigger spike down. So we'll see how it plays. Right now, short-term bullish on equities and short-term bearish on the VIX. Moving over to my account, so you can see I managed to be down just a little bit on the day, just short of $400. And if you saw my video yesterday, I was positioned quite bearishly actually going into today's session. So I had to switch up my positions pretty dramatically early in the session. I was down a lot immediately on the open and I was able to claw back some of that loss. So $400 down, being positioned quite bearishly into such a dramatic up move. Honestly, not terrible trading, but it is kind of depressing to be down on a day where the NASDAQ was up 13.5. Typically, that's a very strong day for me, but it was obviously an overnight whipsaw, which is tough for me to trade. In terms of positions for tomorrow, normal IWM position, 224 for tomorrow for $3 credit. That's already in a bit of a profit. I rolled it up and out early in the session. A little bit less than $2 left on that for potential profit tomorrow. And then looking at the Qs, 200 shares, sold a 467.5 call here for $7.75. That's 2 days from now. So that max profit all the way up around 474.25. So that gives me a little bit of room there. It is 2 days out as well. I still think we're going to see some bullishness, and you can see we're up pretty solidly after hours with that meta move. And then I sold a put here at the end of the session, let that go to expiry. There was still some money on it, so that should come in tomorrow. Max profit there was 266 and it was at 178, so about another $80 or so on that. And then I sold a 472 for tomorrow, basically at the money for 267. That was at a small loss. That should be in a profit as long as we continue to rally here after hours. And then I do have a longer dated call at 475. We'll see what I do with that. We'll see how aggressive the rally continues to be. And then XOP, $62 profit there. Honestly, probably should have taken this off once we got the big gap up. But either way, I still like XOP into the medium term. Overall, very bullish, looking for that second day push across markets. Let me know down in the comments section what you think of the Fed's comments. Did Jerome Powell say everything as dovishly as possible? Or is there still a chance that we don't get that first rate cut in September? Definitely like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video, and make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.